Support for this program is provided by
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Future of Work Town Hall of 2023. I'm One Detroit producer and Future of Work host, Will Glover. In 2022, we covered a range of workforce topics from education to placemaking. And to kick off this year, we're going to look at the state of Southeast Michigan's workforce through a generational lens, looking at all sorts of things like Gen Z. Will their mastery of digital communication and social media help us navigate socioeconomic issues and adapt to climate change? Or millennials, can we find meaning in our work? How will we capture the talent held by the largest and most educated generation as they bridge the gap between old and new? Generation X, the ones who actually built and coded the internet as we know it today, can they fill the shoes of their predecessors, baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964, known as the Me Generation? They claim the title of richest generation in American history, a cohort that's home to Bill Gates, Stevie Wonder, and John Wick himself, Keanu Reeves. By 2030, they'll all be at least 65 years old. That means retirement is just around the corner. Or is it? Well, they're not gone yet, so that's where we'll start today. And to help us get a better picture of baby boomers in the workforce, I'm joined by Detroit Free Press personal financial columnist, Susan Tompor. Susan, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Will. It is an important topic to talk about these baby boomers. We've been talking about them for a long time, and retirement is certainly a key issue.
Absolutely. So let's just set the stage, and we'll start a little bit in the past and come back to the present day. So where I'd like to start is, how has the economy changed since 2019, just before the pandemic, to where we are today, and how has that impacted people's savings and investments?
Well, I think it is important to start here at where the economy is, because we didn't think we were going to be here when the pandemic shut down much of the economy. The recovery wasn't expected to be rapid, but a lot of money was brought in by Congress and these stimulus packages. But many people don't feel very secure right now, and that's an issue right now as people think about their retirement, and it could lead to some delaying when they're going to retire. It's amazing, but the Wall Street had the worst year since 2008 last year. Hard to imagine that. But some 401k folks who are looking at their statements now are looking at declines of 20%, maybe a little bit more than 20%. Some are looking at 10, depending on how conservative they were. But the key thing here is about the market and investing, which made it very difficult last year. Interest rates were going up. The Fed pushed rates up rapidly. That hurt bond funds, and bond funds that traditionally have been a cushion, have been supported. And they had a terrible year last year, down about 10% or so. So that did mean a lot of people lost a lot of money in those 401ks. We're also starting to see some tightening in the home values. So if you're buying a home, you might have more power. If you're selling a home, you have less power because interest rates have gone up so much. And that means the monthly payment has gone up so much. So people who are looking for a new home, even the boomers who might be looking to trade down, if they're going to be looking at a mortgage, it's going to be higher than they would have anticipated. Another key point, which I don't even need to bring up, is inflation. Everybody goes through this every day, right?
Yes.
Grocery store, car. But the big thing is December's numbers were better, not great, but 6.5% over a 12-month time period. That's better than higher rates earlier in the year of last year, and a little bit of a decline. So we'll see. The Fed's going to be meeting again in the end of January. Another rate hike of a quarter expected. Another rate hike of a quarter expected in March. So rates are going to continue to go up. But it's that uncertainty. I think that's really where we want to focus on, because that's really what drives the, am I going to retire? Am I going to take a new job? Am I going to buy a home? These are the things that if you're really uncertain, you might not want to make a big move.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, even before the pandemic happened, there was question about, how much people were able to save, how much people needed to save for retirement at every level. But have, in general, I guess, people been saving enough for retirement, and specifically baby boomers, since it's, could happen for them in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, in general, no. I think in general, a lot of people are overestimating how much Social Security will help them. A lot of people don't pay attention to some of the details in some of these circumstances. One thing that's key for boomers who are born in 1960 and after, their full retirement age to get their full benefits for Social Security is up to 67. A lot of people don't realize that. And in the past, that would have been for generations before at 65, and then it moved to 66. So that's a key point to understand. You really want to understand that. Because the earlier you retire, the less you're going to get in Social Security benefits, and that could keep some people into the workforce a little bit longer. And some people did take a hit in 2020, too, with the market. They might have panicked when the market dropped so much in the beginning, pulled everything out, didn't see some of the recovery that came later. So their worst years are made even worse because they didn't get any recovery.
Yeah. So one of the numbers, I guess, that people were touting, or always talk about, is, having 80% of your pre-retirement monthly income available to you. Or was that something that people are still able to hit? What was
Oh,
that
80%.
changed?
Yeah. Yeah, that'll
Like that sounds
yeah, that'll be great, right? For some
nice.
people,
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen because the pensions are also different. So
Mm.
that is gonna put pressure on people to stay in the workforce a little bit longer. Um, 80% is a lot. Some people say you might even need more if you're going to be traveling, or if you've got healthcare issues. I mean, there really are crazy numbers out there that you might not save as much as you think when you quit working, depending on how much you spend, how much you want entertainment, how sick you are, if you need a lot of healthcare. Those healthcare numbers are really scary. I was looking those up
Yes.
earlier, and $300,000, $400,000 that you need for healthcare, and that's not without long-term. That's without long-term care. So you
Yes.
really, it's tough. I think only about half of Americans. This is one key point: are able to keep steady employment when they're 50 in their 50s. So that is really what's hurting a lot of people. Think about that. Only half of the people who
Yeah.
are like 50 and above can hold on to that job. What that
And
means
so,
is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. Like, you can
I was
finish.
going to say what that means is they're looking for another job, and it's probably lower paying.
Mm.
So, if you lose a higher paying job in your 50s, early 50s, and you end up taking a lower paying job, this particularly hurts women, and it hurts women without college degrees. So we talk a lot about people who are very educated and able to stay on. Everybody knows an attorney who's 90, runs his own firm and is still
Right.
working, right? But there are law firms that have mandatory retirement at 62. So that's not even a thing. Some firms can have mandatory retirement under the law, like a law firm or an accounting firm. Others, that's not allowed.
Right. So, another interesting thing, especially because we're talking about the fact that there may not be the ability for some people to work simply because they can't get the job, or they have to, downsize or take a step back. But according to Pew Research, by 2031, there will be actually more 65 to 74-year-olds that are participating in the labor force. What is your reaction to that stat, based on what we've been talking about?
Well, that's where the trend's been going. So if we take the trend and keep it consistent, that's where it's been going. A lot of talk about 30% of the people who would be in that age group being in the workforce, which is a lot, if we get there. And it's also key to understand, some of the reasons that people would want to do that. One, they need more money. Two, they like their jobs. If you're educated, have a good job, are able to work remotely. AARP just came out with a survey they did of people 40 and higher. And the top thing they want is to be able to work remotely. They want to be able to have some flexibility out of the office. So, now that we have more flexibility out of the office, I'm working from my home here right now. People do feel a little bit more comfortable. They feel like they can handle things a little bit better. So they may want to stay in the workforce longer. But there's the confluence of, okay, are you not in great health? Because there are people who are actually in worse health than their parents would have been at their age. Everybody isn't equal. That's the really crazy thing about retirement and everything else, right? Everybody is certainly not equal. And in terms of healthcare, if you're, a lot of times we always talk about people working in a factory setting so their bodies can't handle it. Well, you can work in an office setting where you could have health issues. So that may keep you out of the workforce. And many jobs out there right now are warehouse jobs. They are maybe, we think of manufacturing going away, but look at the Amazon. They are going to be cutting Amazon. That's part of the landscape going into this year. We are seeing some job cuts, but so if you're, at a place where they're cutting jobs or you can't handle the work that's being asked of you to do. Also, there's another issue that's really important. Often it's for women, but it can be for other people. It can be for a spouse, caregiving in the older years. So, man can certainly take care of his wife. People take care of their parents, and sometimes there's too much pressure there, and people do retire. So there's a lot of pressure, and there's some folks that say this could be on there. And another one that we didn't mention and is so important, and it still exists very much, is age discrimination. There is prevents you from working longer than you want because the company is discriminating, and there are cases. On the books with IBM, you go all over and look at some of the pressures that people had, some of the ways layoffs were done in the past at certain companies. And there's definitely anybody in this group who doesn't believe that there's age discrimination is probably hiding under a rock.
Right. Well, and that also, to speak to your point, it sounds like the general picture of what people think retirement is and how that process goes does not necessarily match what the realities are of it, because you're talking about things like facing a more difficult time as you age to get another job or to stay at the level that you achieved. There are other factors that you have to figure out how you're going to pay for outside of making sure you're making enough money to have just retirement. You still have to, take into account the healthcare factor. And one of the things that you brought up that spans every generation is definitely the caregiving, because the expense is massive, and it does a lot of the caregiving work we know falls on the shoulders of every generation of women, whether it's a young woman who has kids to take care of and childcare to figure out, or parents to take care of. That it's just the way things have been going. So as we're talking about all of these things, it has to beg the question for someone who's considering retiring: is this the time to get out? Do I wait? How long do I wait? What are some of the considerations that are going into when specifically baby boomers decide to step away from the workforce?
Well, one of the things that, you and I talked earlier was about, are people feeling conflicted? Should I go? Should I stay? I think the conflict comes when the company is having financial difficulties or the company is putting pressure. Last year, I wrote about some issues at Ford. Ford actually sent out a memo to its workers saying, it didn't say now's a good time to go, but essentially that was the subtext. Now's a good time to go, because there was a lump sum payout for some salary workers. It happened to be in the math. It happened to be the way inflation was going and interest rates. But when that lump sum is calculated based on higher interest rates, this is kind of hard to understand and hard not. But when it's calculated based on higher interest rates, you get a smaller lump sum, because they're assuming that you can go out and make that money easily over your lifetime because interest rates are higher. So you get a smaller lump sum, and many workers at Ford, salary workers, not hourly, this didn't apply to hourly, could get their pension in a lump sum. And the lump sum would be, according to Ford's memo to its workers, 20% to 25% lower in 2023 than it would have been last year. So some people who are nearing retirement, felt the pressure. If I want to manage my own retirement savings, if I don't want a pension check, And there's all sorts of reasons that you want a pension check and not a lump sum. But many people do take that lump sum because they feel like, they feel like they can handle it, and it may be better for their financial situation to do that. So people did. We wrote about Ford said 1,000 retirees decided to go. So 1,000 workers decided to retire by December 1. They didn't say whether they all took the lump sum or, what pressure they took, but felt. But, if you're going to get $500,000 as a lump sum, if you're a well-paid salaried worker, and you see 100,000 disappear by the flip of the calendar.
That changes the calculus a little bit.
Yeah,
For
that
sure.
sure does. But it isn't for everyone. Everyone isn't facing those particular issues. But it depends how you feel. If you feel like your job's pretty secure, if you feel like you like your boss. I know a lot of people, later in life when they're dealing with people, the workplace dynamics, even working remotely, sometimes if they feel the pressure of taking on more work, obviously more companies are trying to do more with less, and if more responsibility is being put on people, that's when they feel the pressure to go. But some bad decisions can be made because you're making a decision for 20 to 25 years of your lifetime.
Yes.
Exactly.
That is the thing that I always, because I read the article that you're talking about, and that was the thing that struck me is like all of a sudden you get a memo in your email that says you have to make a decision about the next 30 years potentially of your life by the end of the year,
Right.
which is a whole other level of pressure and planning that all of a sudden, especially if you were someone who was looking to maybe stick around a little longer because of, I like the work, I like the environment, I'm still not ready to retire. That definitely it changes the approach to retirement as a whole. But one of the other things that you just brought up that I'm curious if you've heard anything about was, is the workplace relationship, the conditions, is that factoring into people's decisions to come and go? Because we always hear, especially generationally, that baby boomers don't want to adapt to the new technological advancements, or they're having a hard time communicating with millennials and Gen Z in the workplace, and this, that, and the other, which I always take with a grain of salt because people are people.
Right.
Communication is communication. That like I just don't buy it. But has the change in how we work remotely, where we work, as you're saying, there's downsizing and doing more with less. Has that been a factor?
I think it has. I think people, people want relationships at the workplace. People want to be able to trust the people they're working with. It's like a team. You trust the person that is on the floor with you to take care of what's being done. And if you don't like what's being done, that can come into your factoring into thinking. I attended a National Press Foundation seminar in September in Washington, and AARP was involved in that. And one of the things that they talked about, which is very interesting to me, some companies are actually committing to having a generationally diverse workforce, where they're understanding the importance of having a mixture of different ages, just as important as, different ethnicities, different, women and men, that you don't want a uniform look in your workforce. And it's so important. And I think that's intriguing to me that, there is actually a list of companies that are committing to this idea and committing to supporting it. And I think that would make it a lot easier on every generation if you knew how to work with other people, and mentoring, if you could work with a mentor, because everybody benefits. I know I work with I mentor, someone in my workforce, and sometimes I think she gives me more than I give her. So I don't know.
Yeah,
There's that.
their relationships for sure, and it makes
And the
me.
knowledge, there's knowledge on both
Yes,
sides of the equation. And, I share my institutional knowledge. I share the knowledge I have over my experience in my career, but she also has knowledge of how, why people in her generation are not reacting the same way that people in my generation might be to an assignment. It's interesting. It's just
absolutely.
interesting to have those conversations.
And that makes me, that's the perfect segue, because the Detroit Policy Conference just passed, as you know. And while I was there, I got a chance to talk with the co-founder of Daily Detroit podcast host, Jer Stays. We'll cut to that clip where he's talking about the business relationship, whether or not businesses are ready for the retirement, and the retirement rates that we're seeing. And then on the other side of that, I want to get your response from that, Susan. Are baby boomers retiring at a higher rate than we're used to seeing? And are Southeast Michigan, Detroit firms, businesses, organizations, are they ready to lose that core of employees, and can we backfill?
So two-part question, so two-part answer. Yeah. We have some data when it comes to the retirement rate from the Federal Reserve. Retirements are up about 1.5% since the pandemic. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but in a population as big as the United States, according to them, that kind of makes up a large part of that missing workforce. You know, people say, oh, people don't want to work, don't do, no, we're just literally people retired early. That's a large section of that. The second part, are Michigan companies, are Southeast Michigan companies ready? I'm not so sure. Yeah, I'm not so sure, because it's not just backfilling, it's backfilling with the institutional knowledge and experience. So one has to wonder, like, and it's going to be depending on the company, is there the mentorship programs in place? Is there the path to success, the on-ramp to a career, knowing, with people in charge, knowing that at some point their time will be up, right? That is just the fact of life. And so I think it really behooves competent and skilled leadership to institute mentorship, to look at the next generation, knowing that's what's coming behind you, and that's what's going to be sowing seeds that you may not be around for the tree to grow.
For those of you just joining us, I'm Future of Work Town Hall host Will Glover, here with financial columnist Susan Tompor from the Detroit Free Press, talking about the looming wave of retiring baby boomers. Susan, we just watched Jer from the Detroit Policy Conference, in my conversation with him. One of the things that he talks about is whether or not companies, firms, organizations are prepared for this wave of retirements, and he also talks about the fact that the rate is a little more higher than we're used to seeing. And we were just talking about some of the things that businesses have been doing. So I just want to get your reaction to whether or not you think companies are ready, and how much are businesses and organizations participating in that decision as to whether somebody is retiring or not.
Yes, I think up until this point, companies have been looking at retirement as a way to save money many times, because they view those workers as higher paid workers. Maybe they had some benefits in place that they stopped offering people and say hired after 2010 or 2013 in terms of pensions and that sort of thing. But the reality is we have a tight labor force. And they discovered in the pandemic that losing, people who had institutional knowledge, who could do the job pretty productively. Some of the research is showing that when two generations work together, much more productive, because you are able to get some knowledge, and in terms of how to do the job quickly, how to do it accurately, how to get things done promptly. One thing that I'm thinking about that seems to be key, our economy is very different than it was, 5 years ago. Things may be changing. Some of that experience is going to be very valuable if we're looking at a downward trend in sales. How do you pick sales? How do you, increase some of this? I think companies need that knowledge. In Michigan, we're looking at some pretty tight times with the population. The University of Michigan forecast is showing after 2045, the state sees more deaths than births. So, we are going to have a tight population. That's going to put pressure on companies. The one good thing is we've had an outflow of college graduates over the years. They've gone to other states. They've gone to Chicago's, New York, elsewhere, because they need jobs somewhere else. That might keep some of the talent. We might not have some of that young brain drain that we faced in the past going forward. I don't think companies are really looking at this. Some are, but I don't think overall anybody's really ready for what's going to happen next.
Right. Well, and you just pointed to it, because my next question is, what does flat population growth combined with a growing retirement sector that's going to leave those talent gaps that you're talking about, that institutional knowledge, how is that going to permeate through the economy? What kind of bottom lines are we going to be just losing money, essentially?
Well, I think the one good thing is we do have a lot of universities here. So if those students don't leave and they take jobs here, but companies are going to have to make it more attractive. I spoke with a PNC economist in the fall who said if we don't want to lose the younger workers to other states, we have to make these communities, our areas more attractive, so college grads don't leave, because that's going to be very key in terms of keeping talent. You don't just want to keep, the existing talent, you want to grow. I love that part about that your guest earlier said about planting the seeds and seeing something grow, because you want to leave the place better. And leaving the place better is nurturing new talent and keeping it in the state. So I think that's going to have to be an issue. An aging population is going to lead to higher demand on healthcare services, whether you want to, say that or not. It's true. And the U of M economists noted that's where there's been a gap since the pre-pandemic, in healthcare workers and the like. So there's going to be more that needs to be looked at. More that needs to be done, making communities more friendly, pedestrian friendly, biker friendly. A lot going on.
Yeah, so we have some comments coming in from some of our viewers. Thank you for that, guys. Beulah on Facebook is just sharing her story that she was, forced into retirement at age 42, but she was fortunate enough to have some people around her to help her fall back and cross over into the skilled trades. But she says, she was forced to cash out and ultimately, unfortunately, had to file for bankruptcy. And she said it was not an easy situation. So to help maybe others avoid that, one of our other questions is, I'm not a boomer, but I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm curious to know how the current issues impacting baby boomers might also affect Gen X workers. So I'll leave that one to you, Susan.
Oh, well, the viewer that was talking about being forced into retirement at 42, we think about that. That's your company, that's your business, and you really do have to have that education, willingness to transition, to learn a new skill, to maybe move out of an area. So important in your 40s and 50s to keep that education going, because you're going to want to keep working. And Gen Xers are still facing the pressure of saving. Like it or not, you have to live on less than you make to save for retirement. That is the only way you can save for retirement, is living on less than you make. And that's very hard. Car insurance is high. Interest rates are high. So you do have to sort of make choices, make decisions as to how you do it. You start out basically by 10%. You set aside 10% into that 401k. You don't put it all in a cash account. You do take some risk with the market. You don't panic when things go down. You sort of stick with it, and plug away and have some diverse savings. You want to have, they always say 6 to 9 months in emergency savings. I'm not sure there's a lot of people out there that would have that kind of money.
A very tall order. Yeah.
It's extremely tall. You know what? It doesn't matter. Any emergency savings you have is going to be money that you don't borrow at 29% on a credit card. So that's how you have to look at life. It's all on the margin. Anything you do, even if it doesn't meet the goal, is going to be better than saying, this is totally impossible. I can't handle this. I'll never be able to retire. I'll never be able to own a home. Never is not a good word. You have to just inch away, piece by piece.
So because we're already talking about it and we're drawing close to the end of our time together, just expound on some of the advice that you would give to people who are currently making the decision as to when they're going to retire in the next few years, and also for the Gen Xers, the millennials, the Gen Z, who have the most time to prepare out of any of us. What advice would you give them?
Well, those with the most time's on your side. That's what they always said, so that's when you start saving early and you add to it. If your company's making you save 3%, save 4, keep adding, saves 10, move it up. People might not even realize this, but those who are 50 and younger can put away $22,500 in a 401k this year. Imagine that. But that's the maximum they're going to allow you to put. And 50 and older, you can put away $30,000 of income into a 401k. That cuts your tax bill. A lot of people don't realize that it can be done on a way to cut your current tax bill. And, that can help. Do people want to put away $30,000 into a 401k? Maybe not. Right, yeah. But, it's a good time to do it. The Secure Act came out, and it's got some wiggle room in there for people who are between 60 and 63 in 2025, they're going to be able to save a step-up contribution of up to $10,000. So they're going to be able to save even a little bit more. Right now, that step-up contribution is $7,500 for people 50 and older. They can save more than others. So that's important. But it's also important to look at the details and not just talk to your coworker about, what am I going to get when I retire? Because unfortunately, there's different retirement benefits based on when you were hired. Somebody who might be hired at Daimler Chrysler at one point can get a certain level of retirement benefits. Someone hired, more recently is going to get another level. And I know, people you talk to, I've interviewed so many people over the years in terms of retirement, and it really does depend on your individual situation. You want to look at, your health. Are you going to be healthy? Do you think you'll be able to keep up with this job? I write a lot about scams lately. I want to make a plug on that. You really do have to watch because they do go after the older workers, older people having more money, like the banks, rob a bank, rob an older person because they have more money. One thing I wanted to, Beth Truesdale is at the Upjohn Institute here in Michigan, and she has a wonderful book, very detailed, very researched. It's called Overtime, came out in the fall. I learned about this when I was at the National Press Foundation. It's about America's aging workforce. Lots of details in here, maybe for employers who are looking at this issue. For people in the industry, it's not a consumer type book on how to save for retirement, but it's more of a overview, an academic type publication. But it is really important to start thinking about these things, even little by little, even understanding small things like what age do I have to be to get a maximum Social Security benefit?
Right. So I can't thank you enough for joining us today, but unfortunately, that's where we have to stop the conversation. Again, Susan Tompor of the Detroit Free Press, thank you for joining us. For anyone watching, tune in to next month's Future of Work Town Hall on February 15th at 12 p.m. noon. We'll be talking about Gen X. For more of our Future of Work coverage, check out onedetroitpbs.org/future of work. I'm Will Glover, and I'll see you in the future. You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.
Support for this program is provided by